customer. And eventually, like you're saying, you could actually spin up a Bitcoin and XDC as a subchain off of Metal Blockchain. All of these subchains can communicate to each other, which is really interesting. And for now, Proton is the banking subchain for your tech stack. And so that's where all the different DeFi apps, the integration with bank infrastructure, where all that's going to live.
Exactly. So we ended up when we built Proton, we looked at everything. We initially were very excited about, building things in kind of the Ethereum land, and there were so many problems with the EVM from miner extracted value, MEV indexes, where people are front running with higher fees and bots and things like that, which has become a whole economy now with flash bots and everything. And then there was other issues. We wanted to have fast and feeless, and we wanted to have human readable names. And so we started looking at EOS.io and Antelope, and we found everything that we needed. But there were some issues with the way that EOS was initially implemented. So you'd show up to the platform, and it was kind of confusing and tricky, more so than, for example, using Bitcoin or something. So we modified all of that. We built a DAO around it, and we made it really very fast and efficient. One of the things that happened with that platform is it kind of took on a life of its own with the community, with the EOS Network Foundation, and they started to build inter-blockchain communication and EVM into Antelope. And that they've made a ton of progress. It's really great. We started looking at it and said, you know what? If the goal here is to get Proton to faster finality, at the current time, at present day, it's 180 seconds. We think that we might have a better way to get it down there. So we started looking at some of the other blockchains and technology. How did, for example, Avalanche get down to a half second? And we came up with the idea of forking Avalanche and rewriting all of the Antelope code into Golang, which we've successfully done now. We're in kind of the testing phase. And in doing that, we lowered the contract execution time from about 450 milliseconds to, we're not exactly sure how fast it is because it's faster than the benchmark tool, but it's under 100 milliseconds. So we're trying to find out how fast that is, but I think it is actually one of the fastest chains in the world because of on execution time. And then we lowered the time to finality with Snowman protocol to a half second. And we kind of came to the conclusion that we thought that maybe people wouldn't want necessarily to bring EVM code inside of EOS or Proton, that in most cases, they want to either build their own chain or they want to stay on Ethereum proper. In our research, that's what we found. So we came up with this idea of, instead of trying to cram the EVM into Antelope, let's make these parallel chains that can talk to each other. And now Antelope has launched EVM on their platform. They have IBC. I think it's all very powerful, but when it came to these larger institutions, they didn't necessarily want to create their own delegated node, network. They wanted to just be able to spin up quickly and be secure. And then also when it came to kind of like Ethereum or Bitcoin, or in this case, Avalanche, there were certain things that weren't really fine-tuned for what they wanted to do. The idea that 51% of the network is enough to take it over is still pretty scary. So fine-tuning that above 80% and doing other things that were focused on the financial layer, traditional TradFi coming in and looking at this like, okay, we can talk to a public layer, but we still kind of have our own private blockchain running on top of it. And that's where we got a lot of traction. We started to see a lot of success, and everything that we built with Proton at some point will be able to be ported by other chains and things like that. So you could have a Proton exchange on a Bank of America chain or a City blockchain or something like that on Metal blockchain, and that can talk to Bitcoin, can talk to Dogecoin and Ethereum, and ultimately can talk to other banks is the idea as well.
Interesting. All right, so you're building a network of networks effectively. So I just wanted to ask some clarifying questions because I've read the white papers for Metal blockchain and for Proton blockchain. I just want to make sure I understand. So is it correct to say that Proton was initially a fork of EOS.io? And
That's right.
Okay. And you made improvements to it, and so it's no longer, I'd say, backwards compatible because you've introduced improvements to EOS.io that fit the needs of your customers. And you wanted it to have faster settlement time. make it more scalable. And so you've now forked Avalanche and fine-tuned Avalanche. Is that tech stack going to replace the consensus or the protocol that makes up Proton right now?
Yeah, exactly. So right now it is still kind of compatible, right? Like we can upgrade to the latest version of Leap and everything like that. We've changed a lot of the core system smart contracts, the way the resources are handled. But a lot of things right now in the DPoS environment for Proton are still compatible. When we make that shift and we go from DPoS to Snowman consent proof of stake, it's going to be very different. So there still will be this delegated model where 21 BPs are producing at any given time. But instead, it's going to become a lot easier. So in the past, in Antelope, it's hard to become a block producer, right? You have to have access to a data center. You have to have access to a lot of hardware and resources. It's not quite like being a Bitcoin miner, but you're also not going to do it out of your home, right? But with Snowman, with Avalanche, and with Metal, you could run you could be a validator on your laptop. You might not want to be, but you could. And that's how low the technical requirements are. And essentially a home internet connection, ISP, could also work, although you probably want to have something a little more stable, but that's the difference. And so now anyone can become a block producer when we switch to Antelope virtual machine on Metal blockchain. Everything's going to be a lot faster, infinitely faster, about like 1,000% faster in terms of executing. The finality is going to be a lot faster. But at that point, when we switch to AVM on Metal, that's when it's no longer backwards compatible, right? Because it's a completely different language. Upgrading it and everything is, we'd have to rewrite every upgrade and write our own custom code. But that's where it starts to really diverge. And there are some things that we're doing with Metal as well, with the validators around compliance and the ability for banks to basically be able to like whitelist out OFAC countries and things like that. There's a lot of stuff we're doing there as well that may not be backwards compatible. But we've taken the open source technology, recognizing the work of Dan Larimer, Eamon Gunsier, and saying, this is really good stuff, right? We're going to fine tune it for a more specific use case. And when it came to Antelope, we thought it would make sense that other banks and institutions would want to run a lot of similar type applications like loan and DEX and things like that and use the DID, but they may not want to do it completely under our environment. So that was kind of the vision. And so far it's been proving to be really right. We've made a ton of traction, and we're getting ready to launch the AVM. The AVM, there's no guarantee. This is a question we got asked a lot. How do people switch over? Do you have the authority to tell people to switch over? And we don't really. We're just going to push this thing out. And if people like it, they're going to migrate. And if not, then they won't. And we'll support it and we'll see what happens. And I think that the nice part about this, the thing that's really cool about it, is that it will really increase the decentralization of Proton. Because once, when it was very difficult to become a block producer, now becoming a validator, anyone can do it. And I've seen the difference between the two blockchains, where you have people from all over crypto Twitter, from our community, spinning up validators and doing it really simply. And so I think that's something that was kind of, if you look back to Bitcoin in 2009, 2010, there was a time where you could actually mine at home, like in the first year or so, couple of years. And now that's obviously, that dream is dead.